Well, hello everybody. As the title indicates, I'm going to start using sourdough again. I bought a commercial starter, 1 ounce of it, and developed it up into something that I can cook with, and it's working quite well. The video initially was almost an hour long, and so I decided to divide it into 2 sections. In this first section, I'll develop the starter and make pizza and waffles out of the parts that you discard when you're trying to strengthen the starter. And at the end of this video, I will put a link to part 2, one of those little things that pops up on the screen. You can actually watch either part 1 or part 2. It doesn't make any difference which order you watch them in. But I thought that if I divide it in half, you'd be more apt to watch it rather than sit through a full hour. So without further ado, we'll get started on part 1. One of my subscribers recently told me that she has ordered some sourdough starter from King Arthur Flour, something that I have thought about doing many times down through the years and never did. At least twice, maybe 3 times, I have made my own sourdough starter with varying degrees of success. Just reading the instructions that came with this is King Arthur sourdough starter that I ordered a couple of days ago. I can see why I didn't have such great success. The growing it on until you get what they're calling a ripe starter. Each time that you use it, I don't think I ever did that, which is why I had to add other yeast to get my bread to rise. But anyway, this is the beginning of the process, according to King Arthur, now that I have received this little bottle. I already opened it once and smelled inside, and it's a lovely yeasty smell. It says to add 2 ounces of water, which is 1/4 cup of lukewarm water, to this little bottle here. And stir to get it away from the sides and dissolve it and get it into the water as much as possible. I want to read the claim that they make on the side of the bottle here, which how they would prove that claim, I don't know. What does it say? Descended from a starter that has been nurtured here in New England since the late 1700s. Okay. I would think that might be kind of hard to prove, but nevertheless, I'm sure it's a very old starter. Now, I'm gonna put the cover on this and shake it a bit, see if I can't get it all dissolved and away from the edges. Well, let's see what we've got in here. I just tasted a little bit that was on my finger. Woo! It is strong. And it also warns you not to eat it, and I've already started eating it. In this container, which is proofing container, also came from King Arthur Flour several years ago. There is 8 ounces of lukewarm tap water and 8.5 ounces of an unbleached all-purpose flour. They of course suggest to use King Arthur flour. Well, I'm here in Canada and I don't have access to King Arthur flour. I think that's probably enough of it to do the inoculation. I'm going to mix this up thoroughly. This is the beginning of the process, which will probably take close to a week before I can actually use it to make bread. As you continue strengthening it, there's a part that you throw out every day and reserve some to inoculate your next batch to get it stronger and stronger. And you can use the discard, the part that you throw away. can make waffles and several other things with it. So the waffles kind of interested me, so at some point here I'm going to make some waffles, which should have a slight sourdough taste, I guess. This gets kept for 12 hours, 8 to 12 hours it says, at a cool room temperature. Not terribly hot, but you know, what did it give? Probably gave it in Fahrenheit, you know, from 68 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, in my house in winter that's not a problem. I can find an area that's about that temperature. So I will see you tomorrow when we move on to phase 2. Well, it has been in this container, I guess, slightly more than 12 hours now, but it's done what the instructions said it would do. I can get you a look at that if that comes into focus. It is bubbly, on its way to developing. So the process now, stir it up, good it said, to redistribute the yeasts that are developing. I guess I had to reread my instructions to make sure I know what I'm doing. I've zeroed out the scales here, and now you take 4 ounces, as close as you can get to 4 ounces, I guess, of the culture that developed overnight. There we are. That's 4.1 ounces, but I guess that will do. Zero that back. And 4 ounces of flour. I like that King Arthur is doing something with weights instead of, well, I got 4.1 ounces there as well, so I'm being consistent, I guess, anyway. I get that to zero back. There we are. 4 ounces of just tepid tap water. Instructions didn't say, but if you were using tap water that has, you know, chlorine and all that good stuff added, I suspect you might be better off if you use some bottled water. Now this gets thoroughly mixed, and this time it only rests at a cool room temperature for, I think it's 6 to 8 hours, it says here. Yeah, 6 to 8 hours. So in theory, I guess things are going to develop faster this time. And with what they call the discard, you can either throw this out, or there are many recipes that you can do with it. And I think with this, I'm going to make a pizza crust. They provided a recipe for pizza crust made with the discarded culture. You add some yeast as well because it isn't strong enough yet that it would rise. So sometime later today, I will be making the pizza crust, and I will include that in the video here. Well, the instructions for making the pizza dough are certainly simple enough. You put everything in the mixer and mix. 10.5 ounces of all-purpose unbleached flour. I'm using Robin Hood. 8 ounces of the discarded culture. Making a lot of clacking noises here, trying to get it all in there. Sticky stuff. Guess that will do. A half teaspoon of instant yeast. And a teaspoon of salt. The last ingredient is hot water, half a cup of hot water. So I'm going to start things up before I add the hot water. I'm going to kill the yeast with it. And that just gets kneaded until you have a firm dough. I'll bring you back once we have a firm dough. I didn't time how long I kneaded it, but somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes, I think, on the machine. And it says until you have a firm dough that is slightly sticky, and that's just about what we've got there. Now put a few drops of oil in. I always use my dough to oil the bowl. The dough has to be oiled anyway. And that gets covered and left for 2 to 4 hours. I'll probably leave it 4 hours, maybe even longer, before we move on to the next process in making our sourdough pizza. Well, it's had more than 4 hours, and it has risen quite a bit. It smells good. It certainly has a sourdough smell to it. I'm going to freeze half of it and just make one pizza. So, try to see. 22 ounces roughly. 11 ounces, I guess. I will put that in a plastic bag and freeze that portion of it. And this instructions say to put it into a disc. Just cover that and let it rest for 15 minutes, and then it is supposed to be easier to work with. So we will see. It has rested for 15 minutes, and now it is supposed to be easier to just push it out into a larger circle or whatever. And it says if it is still springing back, let it rest another 15 minutes. But this seems to be. The smell coming off of it is very sourdough. Looking forward to seeing what this tastes like as a pizza. Several steps that I'm doing here that I have never done before when making a pizza, and I've made a lot of homemade pizza. But now that is covered, and you let it rest for an hour or until it's as thick as you want it to be. So I guess that's up to your personal taste. At some point during that hour, you start preheating the oven, 450 degrees Fahrenheit, with your pizza stone or whatever you're going to cook your pizza on in the center of the oven. And this gets partially baked and then brought back out and put the toppings on it and then finish baking it. I've never done that before either, so an interesting process. But I'll let this set for an hour and then we'll see what it looks like. Well, I've let it rest for an hour, and I've got it on the peel on parchment paper, and now it goes on the pizza stone in the oven for 5 minutes. I've never done this part before. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Well, that is it after 5 minutes in the oven at 450. And now you add your toppings. Let's slide that over a little on the... I'm just using a bought-in pizza sauce. Nothing that I made myself or anything is what I mean. And a selection of vegetables here. Some mushrooms. A bit of onion. Green pepper. Just sweet bell pepper. And olives. That's probably enough. And I'm using a mix of cheese called Tex-Mex. Supposedly it has jalapeno, I think, in it. Anyway, there's absolutely no heat. I've used it before. It's not a bad cheese, but the dream of having some heat come out of it is just a dream. And this goes back in the oven at 450 on the pizza stone for 15 minutes, I believe. I think I'm correct in saying that. So I'll show you when it's ready to come back out again. Now the instructions said 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. I actually went the 15 minutes because I don't want a raw gooey crust if I can avoid it. And this is the first time I've ever done this. It said to put it on a wire rack to let it cool. I always let mine cool some before I cut it. You don't want molten cheese in your mouth. But on the wire rack evidently will keep the crust much more crisp than if it was laying on the wood. It would steam. So I'll let it go for 5 minutes or so and we'll cut this thing. Well, it has rested for 5 minutes and I'm going to cut this thing and see what it tastes like. Certainly sounds crisp enough. crust is, whoops, dropping the toppings off it. The crust is done the whole way through, which is a good sign. I'm still throwing the toppings around. It's very crisp. I'm getting too much of the sourdough flavor yet. Well, eating the thicker bit of the crust there, you can get quite a nice sourdough flavor. And it's crispy the whole way through. I like that. I think I would do it my own way as far as baking it in the future. I would roll this a little thinner, but I always do my pizzas at 550 degrees in the oven for 8 minutes. And they come out what I call perfect every time. So I don't think I would do it again at 450. I think I'd go back to doing it at 550. But at any rate, there is a sourdough pizza made out of the discarded sourdough. And it's pretty soon going to be time to feed and change the dough into a new container again. It's been 8 hours. I think you can probably see bubbles once again. It's active anyway. I'm going to start transferring it now to a large wide-mouth mason jar, blue. I don't know why they're blue. I wasn't aware they were going to be blue when I bought them last year online, but they are blue. So it's 4, 4, and 4 again. 4 ounces of flour, 4 ounces of warm water, and 4 ounces of the starter. Just about it there, yes. There we are, 4 ounces. Now, stir this up. Try to get somewhere near 4 ounces in the bottle. As I continue doing this and increasing the strength, I'm not going to make you watch me do this every time. I will just show you how much it has grown inside of the jar. And I will do the adding myself without you having to stand around and watch. Getting close. Now I'm going to go over, I know I am. No, 8 ounces. And we'll add the water to it. Now, I'm using a mason jar because that's one of the ways that they show in the little brochure that came with the culture, the starter. And it's one of the ways when you can tell that it is strong enough to start using it in bread. It will fill the jar full after 8 hours of fermenting. When it's, I think the term they use is ripe, and it's ready to be used anyway. King Arthur sells a crock for this purpose that you can, keep it in the refrigerator, grow your culture in, whatever. I didn't buy the crock. $20-some, that's why I didn't buy the crock. So I'm going to go with the mason jar. But a crock obviously would not have a sealed airtight lid. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting instead of putting the rubber side of the mason jar lid down so that would seal it, I'm putting it in upside down. Whoops. Just put it back in right side up. I'm putting it in upside down so that it will allow the gases to escape and I'm not going to tighten it down tight. If I ever get it tightened at all, there we go. Just loosely on there. And that will be set aside for another 8 hours. 6 to 8 hours, probably 6 this time. But what I want to show you next is I'm going to be making waffles in the morning with what's left here. You need 8 ounces, so this was 12 ounces when I started. I removed 4. I've got 8 ounces of the starter here. And it ferments overnight. I'll get that assembled and I'll show you how that works. I'm going to have sourdough waffles for breakfast, I hope. I've never had a sourdough waffle before. You need 8 ounces of the discarded sourdough culture. 1 cup, 8 ounces, and that's what that is exactly, I think. 2 tablespoons of plain old ordinary white sugar. 8.5 ounces of flour. Just ordinary white flour, unbleached, and 2 cups of buttermilk. Now this just gets thoroughly mixed, combined, covered, and then it sets overnight at room temperature. Break up that bit of the culture that was down in there, the discarded dough. Get it incorporated. I love waffles. I've never had sourdough waffles. That will be something different. Well, put a cover on that. And phase 2 is in the morning. And we get to try the waffles. I hope you can see through the glass. It's about half full this time. I don't know. I should have marked it, I guess. There are marks on the glass, but I think it was probably down here somewhere. It is growing, but it's got a ways to go if it's going to fill the bottle. Well, my waffle mix really bubbled up overnight. Anxious to see what this tastes like. And I was reading in the instructions, this can also be used as a pancake batter, which I suppose makes sense. Waffle mixes and pancake batters aren't that much different. Now, there are some more things that get added to it this morning. 2 large eggs. And these are my own eggs again. The hens went on vacation for quite a while and weren't laying anything. Most of my chickens are quite old. But they have started laying again in the past week or two. So I'm getting, not too many, but I'm getting some nice fresh eggs again. Forgot I put the butter in the microwave, I guess. 2 ounces of melted butter. This will make a lot of waffles. But whenever I mix up a larger batch of waffles, what I do is cook them all and I freeze them. Thaw them up in the microwave or whatever. And they're certainly much better than those frozen ones that you buy in the store. So that's what I will do with these. I'll have one for breakfast this morning, and that was a teaspoon of baking soda. Jangly spoons here. And a quarter. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Yeah. Time to get the waffle iron out and get it heated up, I guess. There is my very inexpensive waffle maker, waffle iron. Had it for many years. It makes waffles. I guess it's all that matters. I'm wearing my around my neck timer here. Any other recipe that I've ever done with waffles, 3 minutes in this cooks the waffle perfectly. So I'm going to go with 3 minutes on the first one anyway and see what we get. I also put a paper towel under it because I always tend to get too much batter in, and I'd rather have too much than not enough. Some reason I don't like it at all when you open it up and the waffle isn't a complete waffle. So that's a cup, which I suspect is really too much. And I'll start the timer. I'll bring you back in 3 minutes. It's already oozing out around the edges. Well, that is the timer. The 3 minutes are up. And you're supposed to wait until there isn't very much steam coming out. In case you're wondering, it isn't burning. That's not smoke, it's steam. I'm going to have a look anyway and see what I think of it. Oh yeah, it's up on the upper level, but never had that happen before, I don't think. But it looks done. Get it down there. Yes, that looks very nice. Well, I'll get that on a plate with some maple syrup and I'll be right back. It certainly feels nice and light when I took it out, fluffy. A good drizzle of real maple syrup. And I need another fork. I just threw that one away. They are so light and fluffy. Nice crispy outside and a lovely flavor. That is one good thing that you can do with the sourdough left over. They are very good. Of all the different recipes that I've used making them in the past, I've never had one that was as light and airy as these are. Well, that is excellent. Lovely flavor to it. A little bit of a sourdough flavor in the background, but it's the texture and the airiness that I think I like the best. Well, that is 2 things that we've made so far. Soon it will be time, another hour or so, to take out the bottle of developing culture and see how much it has risen. Well, there was enough batter to make 8 waffles. The one that I had for my breakfast, and there are 7 more going in the freezer. I put a piece of parchment paper between each one. It makes it easier to take them out. They don't stick together that way. So there's 7 more breakfasts in there, I guess. Hello there, it's me again. That was the end of part one. I hope you found that interesting. It does take time, the whole process. When I start making the bread here in part two, you'll see that that takes a bit of time too, the different steps, but really there's nothing difficult about it. And I've been very impressed with the results. So if you were to click on up here, that little thing that just popped up there, that will take you to part two, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for watching.